Well, I was, of course, a new reporter. It was my first job, and I was still living in South Africa. I would say there were tremendous pressures on us on many different levels. There are a number of laws that have been in South Africa, enforced in South Africa for a long time, way before the emergency was ever declared, that governed our daily reporting. We were not allowed to report on anything to do with detentions, police action, military personnel, military maneuvers, and so on. From the very first day as a reporter, this governed my life, even though there was no state of emergency there. There was also tremendous psychological pressure in the newsroom not to be seen to be too much anti-government, to be seen to be fairly moderate, fairly, in fact, sympathetic to the government, even though the newspaper was supposedly liberal and supposedly against the government. Many stories were killed outright because they were seen to be too threatening.
And this was articulated by the senior editor to you in any way? Did they have a quiet talk with you when you started to work there? Or?
Certainly, it was one of the major reasons why I felt that I had to leave the country and why I could not be a journalist for a local newspaper in South Africa. There were overt conflicts between myself and my editor, even though I was 20 years old and really a beginner, on anything to do with coverage of the townships, political trials and so on. To interview anti-apartheid activists and quote them saying anything that was anti-government was considered to be very threatening to the newspapers standing with the government, and they held that in great... They had a lot of store put on their relationship with the government. They were very protective of that relationship, and they didn't want reporters rocking the boat too much.
Was this a matter of, let's say, mutual understanding, mutuality of interest on the part of the newspaper and the government, or was it because the newspaper was aware of what the government could do politically and financially to them if they did rock the boat?
I don't think that the editors ever felt that the government would go so far as to close down major daily newspapers. The closest that ever came to really was the closure of the Rand Daily Mail, which was probably the finest newspaper in South Africa, daily newspaper. And really that wasn't an overt government move, although it suited the government very well. It operated on a much more subtle level. The editors really felt that in order to continue covering their bread and butter issues, what they call the issues that are important to the man on the suburban bus, they would have to be on good terms with the government, and also particularly the police department and the magistrates and the judges and so on. In South Africa, making a choice like that is a very political choice, although of course here in New York we make those same kinds of choices. We know that in order to be daily newspaper reporters, we have to get to know the cops and the people working in the Justice Department and so on. But it does not have the same kind of political overtones as it does in a place like South Africa.